So I'm the author of Modern Psychedelics. I'm Joe Dolce. And hi. I haven't been in Ojai in about 4 years, and it's really good to be back in the vortex, I think. It's like, to me, it's always like the land of the tortoises and theosophists. I just want to say I'm finding it really hard to be American these days, and I think events like this are really helpful to be in this country and be together. So thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. Well, it's hard. You know, it's really hard to justify. It's impossible. But before we start, I got to thank Kirsten and Jeremy and Eric Good, who is the owner of this place, who invited me to do this. I mean, it's sort of amazing. This hotel, 5 years ago, it was a fat farm, abandoned fat farm, actually. And they've made it look like it's been here for 100 years. And there's even a better story, because over 40 years ago, Eric and Serge and we all worked together at a nightclub in New York called Area. And maybe, hopefully, one day I'll come back and Eric and I will sit on this stage and we'll really have a conversation about what that was like. Because really, that was one of the biggest and most beautiful and really most challenging trips I've ever been on. And it's true. So I want to introduce you. This is my collaborator here, Stephanie Karzon Abrams. Stephanie lives in Ventura. I first came across Stephanie at the Psychedelic Science Conference in Denver in 2005, right? She did a great talk on house music and psychedelics, and it sort of ruled the whole conference. It really. And then I was writing a story at one point about the safety of using MDMA and Viagra. It's very safe, by the way. Because a lot of men, 40% of men can't get hard when they use MDMA. I don't really think sex is the point of MDMA, but that's another story, really. Anyway, I called Stephanie and I said, Stephanie is a neuropharmacologist. It has 9 syllables. It's a really hard title. And I said, can you give me some insight into the safety of this? And she said, not only did she do that, she came back and told me all about women's menstrual cycles and how they coordinate with psychedelics as well, which we will definitely be talking about as well. She's a really multi-hyphenate, because she's the founder of Beyond Consulting, which helps healing centers and integrative medicine centers set up psychedelic practices. She's a part-time DJ. She's a clinical director at Mystic Health in Santa Monica. So if you need a ketamine session, you know where to go. And she's the co-founder of Public Secret Records, right? And she's also really generous with her time, because in all that, she's agreed to do this with me tonight. So we're going to switch roles tonight. I'm a journalist, and she's going to be interviewing me.
Yeah, you're in the hot seat.
That book.
You're in the hot seat.
And then afterwards, we're going to sell books, and you should please, if you want, buy one. And if you read it, review it on Amazon. Even if you don't read it, review it on Amazon, because it'll really help a lot. Because these kind of books about how to use psychedelics and drugs don't really get a lot of mainstream attention. And it would be very nice of you to do that. And
without further ado, let's begin.
Let's begin.
Have a seat. Please. All right, so you're in the hot seat.
I am. I'm ready. I am in the hot seat, quite literally.
It's quite warm. It's a real fireside chat. So, Joe, author, journalist. You're a multi-hyphenate. Mm-hmm. Used to write for Playboy.
I did, very briefly, but
you wrote a wonderful gateway book called Brave New Weed, and now you've written Modern Psychedelics. That, by the way, the Times covered today, which is huge.
That's the Times of London.
Yes, but still, that's huge. That's huge, because, well, tell us why it's huge.
Well, like I said, I mean, most mainstream publications don't want to write a book about drugs, really. And in London, I can't sell the British rights of this book because they have laws in London that prohibit anything that, quote unquote, encourages drug use. And in this book, I talk about proper dosages, what not to do, what not to mix certain substances with, and they'll never buy it. So it's sort of great that they actually covered it.
Yeah, it's a great book. I know a lot of things about this field, and yet I read through it so quickly in just 3 days, cover to cover. I think there's so many fascinating stories in there, so thank you for this book.
Thank you for reading it.
Why now? Why this book?
So we've all noticed that access to psychedelics has really expanded in the last 5 years. Like, the government isn't really pushing back for some reason. It started under the Biden administration. But everybody's growing mushrooms. right? No matter, they're under their bed, in the closet, it doesn't really seem to matter. Everybody's got them, and anything else you basically want if you're in the world of it. But there's a couple of other reasons. So because I wrote this book, Brave New Weed, people thought I knew everything about all drugs. So they would come up to me and say, well, how many grams of mushroom should I take if I want a big dose? Or how much should be in this capsule of MDMA? And honestly, I did not know the answer. And I thought, well, if I don't know it and you don't know it, probably most people don't know it, and it's probably a good idea to figure it out. But then there's another more personal reason, which is that I'm of a certain age, and I just really didn't want to become a stuck old man. I don't want to become a stuck old man. And I come from a family which my grandfather was like, this is what I do, this is what I believe, this is who I am, I'm nothing more, it's not going to ever change. And I just don't want to be that. I think flexibility is really important. And I think there's many ways to do that, right? You can pray, you can sing, you can meditate, you can do lots of different things, you can build hotels. But I found psychedelics a very useful, quick shortcut to keeping me open to things.
A lot of people call them shortcuts.
Yeah, they're shortcuts. I think they are, actually. So that's really why I decided to do it. And then I managed to sell it for very little money. And writing it took a really long time. So it's like having an expensive hobby that it's probably like building a hotel like this, right, Eric?
It's not funny.
So a lot of people like to compare plants, natural versus synthetic. Do you have a favorite? Do you lean one way?
I lean towards synthetics.
Why is that?
Plants make me nauseous a lot, and they make me really uncomfortable physically. And I continue to do them thinking this is going to pass, but they just do. And I think it's because plants are so complicated and have so many components to them that they use as defenses, and some of them just don't agree with my body. So I generally prefer the things that come out of labs. And I know that's a little apostate in the current psychedelic moment, but it's just the truth. What do you prefer?
I don't know. I think I like them all.
Okay.
I think I like them all. We like to talk a lot about the natural side of things versus the synthetic side of things. What we've seen, traditionally with natural medicines is that people create tradition and ceremony, right? And I feel like the script is now getting flipped, where with synthetic drugs like LSD, for example, we are treating it a little bit as a sacrament. And with natural, psychedelics like psilocybin, the reverence and the respect is kind of falling away. People are using psilocybin microdosing for productivity, for problem solving, for recreation, just going to a festival without practicing, very much intention. So how do you feel about that kind of like role reversal? How do you feel about, not the medical therapeutic use, but more of this like productivity, creativity, self-realization, optimization?
So I'm for it. I have been microdosing for maybe 5 years.
Anyone here microdose?
Anybody microdose? Okay. So
anyone on a microdose right now? Okay,
Stephanie can help you with that. Do you want to do communion?
Oh, let's commune.
And for me, I started sort of out of curiosity, but I did find that it enabled me to get to my desk with less resistance, let's say. It takes away, for me, this sort of background rumination of, oh, you can't do that, or you shouldn't do that, or you're not doing that well enough, which you would think would go away after you pass 50. But God, no, even 60, it hasn't gone away. So I do find that it's very useful in that way. And I don't have a lot of judgment about how people use them as long as they're using them intelligently. Right? I mean, I think, if you're overusing, not stopping, getting yourself into trouble, forgetting to go to work, things like that, then you're in trouble. And then you shouldn't be using it. But I think the interesting thing about psychedelics is what I have learned is that they're pretty self-limiting. They tend not to be drugs of abuse. I mean, yes, Elon Musk and ketamine, okay. But that's at a very low dose. If you use psychedelics at a high dose like you do in the clinic, you're not running back the next day. You have to digest that. It's a big experience.
Absolutely.
You put in, and it takes a lot out of you, and things are really shifted. And I think you need spend the time to do it. So that's what's really interesting about them.
Yeah, and we're definitely, on the topic of microdosing and using them in this way for productivity, we're at a point where culture is way ahead of policy. It doesn't matter almost that the law has not allowed for psychedelics to be readily available. You've got a guy on Signal, you've got a neighbor, you're growing them in your closet. They're so accessible. And yet, again, the legal landscape is lagging behind. Something that we didn't really grow up with in Western culture is the shaman, the medicine keeper, the person, in our family teaching us respect, reverence, and responsibility. So again, the other piece that's missing is education.
Yeah.
So to your point, I also don't mind how people are using them, whether it's therapeutically, recreationally, for productivity, but the education piece is the most important piece, and that's how you keep people safe. So I want to ask you, who should control, govern? It's a hard question.
It's a really
should we
tough
be
question.
Controlling them, governing them?
Well, yes.
we
we live in a capitalist society. It's going to happen, right?
It's going to happen.
There's already these. They're called baby biopharma companies. They're already trying to create LSD without the trip.
Right, salts.
Or lots of these substances without it's a very inconvenient thing to have a therapist having to sit with you for 9 or 10 hours and then integrate afterwards. It's time consuming. So they're trying to create this 1 pill a day model that we're all very familiar with on the basis of psychedelics. And they may succeed.
They will succeed.
I think they will succeed. You worked in that field. Should the government control it? I don't really think they have the skill to do it. So I don't think they should control it. So I think the healthcare system will probably control some of it, as they're currently doing in Washington and Oregon and now New Mexico and Santa Monica, I guess, right?
Yeah.
They can control ketamine, but you have to get a script for it. You have to get a diagnosis for it. It takes it into a whole different realm, and it medicalizes it. And that I'm personally a fan. I'm a real fan of these psychedelic churches. And I use that word church in the way they use it, which is pretty non-denominationally. I'm not religious by nature. Or I should say by my Catholic upbringing, I am not religious, okay? But I have a spiritual life. And I think if these churches can figure out how to sue the government in the right way, which they're working on, to allow psychedelic use, it's really nice to be able to take them in a community of like-minded people with a shared concern for each other.
It is.
I think that's a really interesting thing. I'm trying to write a story about it right now because there's some people doing some very interesting stuff with it.
Do you feel like there's potential to abuse the law around church? Like, oh, okay, fine, we want to have a sacrament of LSD, let's become an LSD church?
Yeah, maybe. But so what? I mean, religion is such. Okay, I have a sister.
So use the law to your advantage.
I have a sister who's a Jehovah's Witness. Don't ask. Okay, it's completely. Like the whole family is mortified. Okay, but she's been that way for 20, 35 years. Like 35 years. So we're used to it. But okay, so here's what's interesting though. They are a religion. They had to fight the government for 20 years to get recognized in the United States. There was a lot of violence against them. They don't have a hierarchy of clergy. Like when they have a thing in the Kingdom Hall, it's you leading the ceremony. It's not a priest, it's not a nun, it's not a rabbi, it's not that. It's a peer-led organization. And they want, through their own weird ways of not using candles and not celebrating birthdays and thinking that gay people are sinners, and they have all, their whole ontology is all weird and stuff. But they think that through studying the Bible, they can have their own experience of the divine.
Right.
And my sister tells me she does, and it's like, okay.
Okay, let's pull on that thread a second. So, indigenous practice.
Go on.
The whole point of communing with these plants was to connect with the divine,
Yeah.
right? They even recently found harmaline beta-carboline compounds inside ancient Egyptian vases, and these are the same compounds and alkaloids that are found in ayahuasca. So it's very clear that there's been ritual from a very long time, people trying to get messages from beyond, trying to connect with something larger than them. Okay, where does that practice meet religion and organized religion for you?
It's what the apostles were trying to. I'm certainly not a theologian, okay, but what the apostles were trying to do is write down what they were watching people have this direct experience of the divine. That's what they were recording.
Right.
So I think that direct experience is not about words or concepts. So like, I don't have a concept of God. Mm-hmm. It doesn't exist for me. Does it exist for you?
Oh, it's such a long... Should I get into the story of that? All right. I went to an all-girls Catholic high school. Every Tuesday we were in Mass. Just repeating. Luckily, I think through my childhood and my upbringing, I was well educated about religion. I had really great teachers that taught us that the Bible was symbolic, beautiful stories. Jesus was a radical. But then when I would get to these masses, it felt like all of that would just fall away and all I would see was hypocrisy. And after going to this mass for 5 years on every Tuesday, I decided I'm an atheist, I'm a scientist, forget all of this. Because maybe blame immaturity, but I couldn't connect the two. I couldn't.
Hard. It's really hard.
It was very hard to sit and listen to the sermons in Mass and also be told if I didn't go to Mass, I wasn't a good example for my school, right? And then take all of these teachings from my parents, from the religion teachers. So I just broke up with the whole idea. And then it wasn't until I used psychedelics that I remembered, I guess, that maybe there is a source from which we all come, and maybe there is something larger than us. And so for me, that's kind of my concept of God. And it restored my faith in something greater, and I think it was important. And speaking of your sister, my brother has faith, not really in like the organized religion, but he's a Catholic, and we couldn't ever speak the same language until we both did psychedelics. So that was really cool. It brought us together. We were saying the same things about life from different angles, but psychedelics did that.
So it's interesting.
Yeah.
So when I was researching for the book, they've done a lot of clinical trials, mostly with psilocybin, but also LSD in the past. And one of the things they use when they're doing research is the mystical, MEQ, mystical experience questionnaire. Okay, so if you're in a clinical trial, you are filling out mystical experience questionnaires all the time.
And by the way, that's really cool that science recognizes that a big piece of this is mystical, unexplainable.
This was started in the 1960s, but here's how they define a mystical experience, and this is why I can relate to this, okay? Not from some idea of God. It's a sense of the sacred. Has anybody here not done psychedelics? Okay, one.
Okay, cool.
Amazing. Thanks for coming. So within the psychedelic experience, this is how you define a mystical experience. You recognize a source of the sacred, a source of all being, that it has a noetic quality, that what you're experiencing is imbued with meaning that is beyond question, that there's a deep joy, ecstasy, blessedness, tranquility, or my favorite word, awe.
Oh, yeah,
right?
That's the best part of that questionnaire.
That is.
Yeah.
An ineffability, that it is beyond words and concepts. I like this one too, paradox, that you can accept the coexistence of mutually exclusive things, like both and versus either or.
Right.
That's a big one, right?
Which is huge, right? Because when you open your mind in these ways, that's what allows...
It's apparent, right?
Yeah.
It's not apparent in everyday life, that's for sure. And then there's a unitary consciousness, right? So it's something that blurs the boundary between self and other, me and that tortoise, me and that rock, me and the sea. Okay, that we are all a part of a greater whole. And so anybody who's done a psychedelic, I think, has a sense of that. And that's what qualifies as a mystical experience. And scientists don't record mystical experiences. They're not good at it. They don't know what to do with that. It's hard to find the part of the brain that's located in. But it's ever since they started talking about psychedelics, and this is hundreds of years ago, they've known this is a truth.
Right.
And that, I think, is a really interesting thing.
Do you want to share one of your mystical experiences?
Well, the one that has actually happened the strongest mystical experience I've ever had was not through psychedelics. It was through sitting in silence. I practice meditation.
Which is inherently psychedelic,
It
right?
is an extraordinary experience. I would say it's harder than psychedelics, that's for sure. But if you sit in silence for 10 days and you come out, suddenly the world has a shimmer that is...
It's called freedom.
Yeah, it's just extraordinary experience. And everything is sort of noisy. I mean, not birds singing and, things like that, but everyday life is a very noisy experience. and a lot of chatter between us is also very noisy. And when and the last time I did, I've done this 1, 2, 3, 4 times in my life. And the last time I came out, it really struck me that this is like what happens after a psychedelic experience. There's a shimmer, a cleansing of the world. I don't know. That's enough. I don't want to talk
that's
too much
beautiful.
about it.
It's beautiful. Okay, so let's talk about bitchy LSD. How about
Bitchy
that?
LSD.
We did like some word associations to different molecules, and Joe said that the word bitchy comes to mind with LSD.
Well, I think it's a little bitchier than psilocybin. Don't you think? I mean, it's a little colder. It's a little more like harsh in a way. I mean, I think it's a fantastic experience, but yeah, I think that's a fair way to describe it.
Yeah, and it's
You disagree?
No, and I think of the word laser.
Okay.
So,
Cutting.
so I get it. So we talked quickly about how, there is a sacrament, even with synthetics, right? And a lot of people revere LSD for what it can do. But now LSD is being used in microdosing, and we know that was discovered kind of on accident by James Fadiman.
Sort of interesting. So James Fadiman he was with Timothy Leary at Harvard in the 1960s. He now lives in Santa Cruz. And around 2013, he was in the parking lot of some place, and some woman came up to him and said, "You're James Fadiman. I've been taking 1/10 of a hit of LSD, and it's amazing. It does all the things we've talked about." And he was like, "Well, I never heard of this." So he went on Reddit, which was just beginning. I mean, he's about 85 now, so good. He is a researcher.
They don't knock it. One of my papers came out of something that I saw on Reddit as well.
Listen, I'm not knocking Reddit at all, but he went in and he discovered that there were a group of people all sort of spontaneously using 1/10 of 1/millionth of a gram of LSD every couple days, and he started writing about it. So then he wrote the book on microdosing. And if you think about 1/10 of 1/millionth of a gram, that is an astounding ability of a compound to change your mind, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's just extraordinary. And he's been very, very good, and he's become a friend, actually. And we talk a lot about microdosing. And he is very funny because he created something called the Fadiman. He didn't create it. He came up with this idea that you take it one day and you go off for 2, and then you take it one day and you go off for 2. But it's become a protocol.
Right. Are you regimented like that?
I'm more flexible about it now. I started with that protocol. For a couple of years I stuck with it. But now I use it more flexibly, and I think it works for me. But he was very amused by it because he said, "I never wanted this to be this is like my idea. It was only an idea, but it became a universal." And I think, especially in the world of technology and Silicon Valley, it really has become. Well, I mean, in the world of Brooklyn, where I live, it's a thing too.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, the history of how it was used also by the CIA and MKUltra.
LSD, you mean?
Yes.
Well, LSD, it's funny, the CIA is probably in part responsible for the 60s and the countercultural revolution.
Yeah, big contributor there.
Big contributor. So LSD was, you probably all know the story, it was accidentally discovered by a guy named Albert Hofmann, who was a chemist for then Sandoz, today Novartis. Very punctilious man. And he was trying to create a blood clotting agent for women after pregnancy. And he was experimenting with a fungus that grows on rye called ergot. And they were trying to synthesize different parts of ergot. Anyway, it didn't work. He synthesized 25 different versions of ergot, all called LSD 1, 2, 3, and put them on the shelf and forgot about it. And then 5 years later, he said he had a particular presentiment to go back and resynthesize LSD 25. None of the others, just 25. And as he was doing it, a tiny amount of this substance got onto his skin or in the white of his eyes. And he had the world's first acid trip. And it was a big accident. He didn't know what was going on.
He had to call his research assistant to take him home.
They went on a bicycle because there were no cars in Switzerland during the Second World War.
And then we've got Bicycle Day.
That's why you have April 19th. Anyway, so he went back like any good scientist would do and did it again. Mm-hmm. And then he had the same experience. And this is like a tiny dose. And then he said to all the scientists at Sandoz, try this. What is it? And all of the scientists at Sandoz were trying it, and they were all blown away. And then Sandoz said, okay, we're going to do an open source experiment. We're going to send this stuff out to any researcher who wants to try it. And I'm telling you, they sent it to thousands of researchers all around the world. All they had to do was write a paper and say, we want to experiment with LSD 25. So it turns out there were 1,000 papers written about this substance in like 20 years. It's one of the, it is the most researched psychedelic in the world. And the CIA found out about this. And the CIA in the 1950s was deeply involved in the Cold War, and they really wanted to find a chemical that they could use to soften the brains of the enemy. And they, good old CIA, what they did is they started experimenting it on American agents without telling them. So they would give them super high doses, like 1,000 micrograms, strap them to tables, flash lights in their eyes, you know, for hours and hours and hours, and then they were really surprised when it would cause a bad trip. And they also were giving it to agents, one of whom famously committed suicide, which stopped that program.
Right.
The program was called MK Ultra. Put the end of a kibosh on that program. Hopefully the same thing will happen in Minneapolis as what's going on today. They just extended it too far. But it got out of the lab. And that's how Timothy Leary in the late 1950s came across it. It got out of the lab. As a matter of fact, he from Harvard wrote to Sandoz and said, send me some LSD. And they did. and that's what happened. And that's how it started. So it's a really fascinating, the history of psychedelics is insane.
Yes, and MDMA followed a similar, trajectory. We talked about how, it was first synthesized in 1912 by Merck for a medical reason, shelved, resynthesized later on by Sasha Alexander Shulgin. Are you familiar with the Shulgins? Yes, by show of hands, I just want to see if all right. So this beautiful couple up in the Bay Area in Lafayette, a chemist and his wife, she was a therapist. He had a DEA license. He worked, for legal pathways. And someone turned him on to MDMA and said, why don't you synthesize this again? And it became a relational technology. Essentially, they started using it in couples therapy. They started turning on all of their therapist friends to MDMA and having.
They called it Atom.
They called it Atom.
They transposed the letters because they didn't want it to leak out into the broader culture.
But guess what? It leaked, and it leaked quickly.
Well, it was really interesting actually. There was a guy in Dallas, Texas, who was a tennis pro. And he had an idea that he's going to raise $1 million in venture capital.
No, I don't know this story.
And produce this en masse. And he did. And he produced it, and it was shipped it was big in Dallas, it was big in San Francisco, it was big in New York, and it was big in Chicago, where I went to college.
Stark Club.
Sorry?
Stark Club.
Exactly. And he obviously got caught, and they got arrested. But when this stuff was going out, people like me, I was in college. I mean, we had MDMA, a lot of MDMA. I remember I went to the Art Institute. It was my first psychedelic experience, and saw Monet, and I never really liked Monet, but I sort of fell in love with those water lilies.
It was an important time.
And that's how it got to Ibiza and Berlin, and then London.
Yeah.
And throughout the world.
Yeah, and big illegal parties being thrown in fields and warehouses into New York, into Chicago, and it was an important piece of history because at that time there were marginalized communities, whether that was the gay communities, black communities, anyone who just wasn't white and straight, was cast out. And so they needed a place, a sanctuary, and so they started these underground rave scenes. It was the birthplace of house music. And of course, MDMA weaved itself into those communities because it is a total love drug. It is a molecule that allows for radical self-expression, acceptance. And so people found sanctuary with this molecule. And I really think that if the masses did not experience it in that way, we would have never gotten to the FDA. it needed to go that route.
It had to go to
It had to.
masses had to discover it. But it's interesting, it's also classified as an empathogen and an intactogen.
Yeah.
So it makes you, feel more, want to touch more, and also emotionally it's very revealing. I use it with my partner, and it's really interesting because it allows you to say the things in relationships that are hard to say.
Allows you to listen to them.
But it also allows you to listen, it allows you to hear it with equanimity and not be so defensive. And I mean, it's not for none of these things are for everybody, okay? I just have to say that. But, if you, again, it's a really incredible substance that, I mean, they used to say that one MDMA trip is like 10 years of couples therapy, and maybe.
I think so.
Maybe. I'm not going to say no.
And in the therapeutic model, there's been, nothing like it for PTSD and trauma.
Yeah, really interesting. A lot of the clinical trials show that not only MDMA, but almost all psychedelics they're called cross-diagnostic. They work on the same diseases that modern medicine has no way to address, like anxiety, chronic depression, as you said, PTSD, traumatic brain injury. It's quite amazing. It's quite amazing.
Because all of these are a product of what we call like the functional symptoms in neurology. We call it like functional neurological disorders. It's a product of like the function of your brain networks, and psychedelics collapse your brain networks. They reorganize, like take a snow globe, you shake it, they reorganize the activity, and they dissolve boundaries between networks so that there's crosstalk when there usually isn't. And when you collapse the network, then you go into therapy, and you can reorganize and you can put it back together. And that's why that therapy is really, really important, or that integration is really, really important. If you collapse the networks and then you don't have positive support, or you don't have any support, it can also go in the other direction. It's a total net neutral, right? We talk about neuroplasticity, so amazing, but it's not positive or negative, it's neutral. It's what you make of that plasticity that gives you that end result.
Should we talk about octopuses on
Yes,
ecstasy?
octopuses on ecstasy,
Okay.
that ecstasy, that's a good segue.
So there's a researcher who's now at Berkeley, and her name is Gul Dolan. She's Turkish-American. She was at Johns Hopkins. And she works a lot with psychedelics and with certain animals, octopuses. Not octopi, octopuses. It's Latin, not Greek. Anyway, she was at the end of her rope, basically. She was super frustrated working in the system. And a friend of hers said, look, I've got these 8 octopuses. Should I send them to you? And she said, yeah. So they got FedEx down to Johns Hopkins. And she went to the department and said, I'm going to give these octopuses ecstasy. And they said, no, that's not what you should do. And she said, well, I'm going to do it anyway. And she did. And at first she gave them a very high dose. And, they were very stiff in the tank like this. I need to tell you, octopuses are not friendly creatures. They are not what you saw on My Octopus Teacher, okay? They're very, very territorial, and they tend to attack each other when in close proximity. So anyway, she had this tank, this big, big tank, and she put a barrier through the middle, a porous barrier, and she gave some octopuses ecstasy, and other octopuses were not. And they were huddled under a rock. The octopuses on ecstasy broke through the barrier and started cuddling with the octopuses who were not. I know, it's funny, right? But so here's what's really interesting. Here's what's super interesting. Until those experiments were 2019, 2020, the way neuroscience talked about psychedelics, and still does, is that this part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, is talking to the what? Amygdala. This part of the brain, give me a thing, whatever they're called, okay? This part of the brain is talking to that brain. And psychedelics makes crosstalk much more possible. Well, the thing about octopuses is they don't have a prefrontal cortex.
They don't have a cortex at all.
They don't have a cortex. They don't have an amygdala. Their brains are 6 million years old. They're like slugs. And they're also distributed in their arms. They don't have a central brain
nervous system.
So that was like, wait a second, what's going on here? How can this be? And more experiments, and she's come up with a theory called the open critical period.
And you also have to mention that she's also demonstrating that what's happening is actually happening at a cellular level.
I didn't say that. Yes, it's happening at a very, very small level. So a critical period is, just stick with me for a second. It's really interesting. We all have, all human beings have critical periods of learning. It's a time when the brain is very, very sensitive and absorbs an enormous amount of information, and then they close. So language learning. Kids who are like, 3 to 9 can really speak a lot of languages very early. And then as you grow older, it's harder. They also can speak those languages with no accent, which is really interesting, okay? After a certain age, you're always going to have an accent in second language. Visual. If you're born with cataracts at a young age, and they're not removed by, say, age 5, you will never see again. That visual period of learning is closed, okay? So she has come up with this idea that psychedelics open a critical period of learning, which is very interesting. And she's actually proven in further experiments that the amount of time of your trip is correlated with the amount of time that critical period of learning is open. So ketamine, which is a short journey, about an hour, the critical period is open 4 to 6 days. Psilocybin, which is about 8 hours, it's open for 2 weeks. LSD, about 10 hours, it's open for 3 weeks. Ibogaine, the longest psychedelic, is like a 24-hour journey, and the critical period is open for over a month. They don't know how long. They haven't been able to figure that out yet. But what's really interesting is this whole idea of setting, preparation, integration. All in her model, the preparation really primes the brain by opening memories, by recharging. Memories are encoded in all sorts of cellular and neural networks in the brain. It primes them. It gets them ready. So if you're going into therapy, if you're doing a journey for your rape, say, you're traumatized by rape, bringing that to mind again opens it. The journey opens the critical period, which enables you to see things differently and attach different meanings and different memories to these events. And then the therapy following helps solidify the new learning. So it's almost a learning model. And this is a really interesting way of thinking about psychedelics. And do you know what her next experiment is? No. Did I tell you? Okay. So she's going to try this. This is the money shot for her, basically. She's going to take people who have had strokes over a year ago. So if you know anything about stroke, people who've had strokes, they can get their motor movement and their speech movement back for about 60 days after the stroke, and then that period closes. It's over. You're not getting it back anymore. So she's going to get people who've had strokes over a year ago, and they've come up with this gigantic, 3D video game, basically, and try to get them to use their arms again that are very, very non-functional, and play with those video games. And they're going to do it under psilocybin. So the idea, again, is to prime in this case, the physical thing, open the critical period, and then go back to the therapy to see if they can regain any motor skills.
It will 100% work. It will, because the mind and body connection that gets almost like reattached is exactly what's going to be happening. And this is possible for spinal cord injury, incomplete spinal cord injury. It's almost this like psychedelic assisted rehabilitation, like a physiotherapy. Yeah. And it's going to also work for learning new skills, yoga practice, playing the piano, learning a new language.
Well, you're so positive about this.
No, I know it well. I feel there are a lot of people in the medical community who have already been underground experimenting in this way. And there's also that fantastic story, I forget, Christopher Murray, the one with the incomplete spinal cord injury, who was told he wouldn't ever walk again and started to microdose, and he's running up the mountain now.
Oh my God.
So it's not about reattaching any kind of neural, pathways or regrowing new neurons. It is the ability to relearn once critical periods have closed.
And I think that's really interesting with all psychedelic experience, right? If you can approach it like that, it's a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite something, huh?
It is. And I think that's like a really great segue into creativity and expression and ritual, because that's something that you really love to talk about.
Well, I think we don't have enough ritual, basically. And I'm trying to find people who are doing modern rituals. I mean, yes, we can all take psychedelics and go to a rave and dance and It's a little weird, don't you think? Like we're all facing the DJ. Like you
No.
ever go to Burning Man?
Yes.
It's like everybody's like, out in the desert dancing, and they're all like doing their own thing.
But they're trying to go back to that, the old school model of like, let's put the DJ in a corner and let's dance with each other. Like people are actually like closing the curtains on the DJ now.
It's really interesting. But I don't think we have enough ritual. So I'm trying to find people who are. That's why I think churches are interesting.
Yeah.
Like I came across this place in Austin, Texas. It's called the Ledgeway Sangha. Sangha is a Buddhist word for a community of like-minded people, really. And they're using some novel compounds. They're using 2CB. Anybody ever use 2CB? It's described as a mix of mescaline, MDMA, LSD. I find it very interesting, but I'm not really sure it is those. Does it remind you of mescaline, MDMA, and blah, blah, blah?
It's known as diet acid.
Diet acid?
Yeah.
Diet acid. That's a great description.
It's like an acid and MDMA trip hybrid, yeah.
So they're doing it in community. It's a small membership. It's a very small membership. It's like 30 people, but they come together bi-weekly. Everybody's talking to everybody. There's no hierarchy, and they use it as I guess you would call it. They call it a sacrament. Okay, it's a sacrament. And I think that's quite an interesting model. And they plan to sue the DEA, actually, to be considered a valid religion, a religion without dogma, which is like the only religion I've ever wanted to belong to. So. That's quite fascinating. And I'm sure there are groups of people doing new things all the time. It's just that we don't have a lot of access to that information yet.
No.
Yeah, I think it'll come.
But
what about you? Do you find a ritual that you like?
Yeah, writing. My husband and I love to make coffee in the morning, and it is a ritual. It's a ritual. It's a ritual, just stand in the coffee corner and chat every morning for a little bit. I like to create, like, for example, someone gave me a clipping of Wachuma San Pedro cactus, and I loved creating the whole ritual, finding out exactly about cutting it up, boiling it, over 3 days,
3 days?
3 days, right? And then praying to it, blowing tobacco, setting intentions, offering it, something like, I love that. And then to consume what you created after you had that ritual is very meaningful. It does connect you in a different way than when you just, I guess,
chew it up.
Yeah, just like throw it all together. Or if someone just hands it to you and says, here you go, and you say, thank you, right? So I think having the ritual just deepens the connection, but it also does something to your thought process. And I think just putting your hands like in the earth or touching the medicine or again, just creating that ritual, that in itself alters your state. Having a practice alters your state. Psychedelic substance or not, right, is about altering your state, deepening the connection, manifesting your mind.
Well, that's what it means. Mind
Right.
manifesting.
Exactly.
Psyche and telos, right?
Exactly.
Mind manifesting.
So
And that's what's
I think
interesting.
that
I
is
think that's interesting too.
But my ritual is really the dance. Let's
The
go
dance.
dance.
Okay.
There's nothing that resets more than the dance and the music. That's my ritual.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I think it might.
Did
be-
it taste like cement and green tea?
It tasted like.
I've never tried it,
It
obviously.
tasted like feet and green tea. Yeah, it was and it smelled really interesting. It wasn't as bad as peyote though.
That's a rough one.
Peyote's a little rough.
That was a hard one for me.
And speaking about 2CB tastes like the inside of what Shulgin's lab smells like. Think about it.
Okay, I've been to that lab.
The smell in the lab
I've
is
never
what
You've
2CB
tasted
tastes.
2CB? You tasted it?
Yes. It's
You're tougher than I am.
It
I'll tell
tastes
you.
like what the lab smells like. Yeah.
Hard to put into words, huh?
Yeah. What's your ritual?
Honestly, it's that thing I
Meditation?
described of just like quiet journey and
Yeah.
then be really soft and sort of lazy the next day.
Yeah.
It's not a real. I mean, I'll dance if the mood takes me. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, I like to move, but I don't. I'm still looking for mine. Anybody else have a ritual that they somebody? Where's Simone? You have a shit. Okay. Can we talk about your ritual?
Sure. Yeah,
So-
I have a microdosing ritual, which involves using a powder, which is cacao and some lion's mane and the mushrooms all mixed up, and actually mixing it each morning. And just that practice creates the ritual.
So it's a cacao, mushroom mix,
a
and
little bit, right.
drink it?
So there's some intuition in how much you dosing in the morning, but just to create that space of taking a moment, incorporating into a meditation, a morning practice, feels very powerful, you know, and kind of the opposite to the pharmaceutical industry, which we're so disconnected from what we're taking.
Yeah.
And so this really is a way to move completely away from that, you know, in the other way. And,
and you make a really good point where routine and regimen does not equal ritual, right?
Good
There
point,
could be
yeah.
a lot of flexibility and intuition that goes into a ritual, which I like because I think I'm a very highly intuitive person and I don't like rules. So it works.
Thus, here we are.
Here we are. I think it might be time for our lightning round.
Go for it.
All right, so we have a little lightning round. We're going to go molecule by molecule. Notice how I didn't say drug.
Thank you. I have a thing about calling psychedelics drugs. Stephanie and I, we don't agree on this. I think they're so unique and get cheapened by calling them what we all just assume are drugs, because I think they obviously are not addictive. They don't work the same way every time. They certainly don't work the same way every time. They have a mystical quality sometimes. There's just so many differences between the things we take every day that are meant to be taken every day and the way psychedelics are.
You made a quick point here, actually. I just want to pull on that thread. You said they don't always work the same time every time. So how many of you, I'm sure you can all relate, you might have a wonderful experience one time and then a more challenging experience another
Certainly.
time, right? So what's the deciding factor? What do you think makes for the challenging experience? Do you believe that the challenging experience comes from a place where whatever came up needed to come up and you needed to process? Do you think it's random?
I don't think so, because I had a terrible experience once on mushrooms that gave me vertigo, which lasted for way too long, like days and weeks. And I don't think I learned anything from it other than that there's these crystals in your ear that can become dislodged and you don't have a sense of balance anymore.
Right, that's a little different.
I had to, crawling to the toilet is just not. No, I didn't learn anything. I didn't learn anything.
Nothing was learned here.
Not a damn thing.
I think that's a bit of an exception. I think usually if we do have challenging experiences, there sometimes are lessons.
So I think often they can be. That one I didn't get much from, I have to say. I didn't.
And we must also...
But I think it's also important to be honest about it, because they're not always positive. They can be tough.
Right, they can be tough. And we have to also differentiate, like, bad trip versus challenging trip or harmful, right? For me, a bad trip doesn't necessarily mean that it's harmful. Like harmful is you had a severe side effect, your health was endangered, or your life was endangered, you ended up, very ill. Yours sounds like a bad side effect.
That was a bad one.
There was no lesson to be learned. But sometimes we spend 5 hours crying our eyes out. And that's okay. That's okay.
That's okay.
That's okay. It's not the trip that you wanted, but it's the trip that you needed, right?
So they say.
That's the first time I did
I don't love that cliche, but
I know sometimes you're like, all I needed was some joy. That's what I really needed.
Bring me the good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay?
The very first time I did a large dose of mushrooms, I was on a roller coaster. It was super interesting, but my friend cried for 6 hours.
You were on a literal roller coaster?
No, I was on an emotional roller coaster, kind of oscillating between like fear, joy, worry, self-judgment, like confusion. I think that happens a lot with 4 grams of mushrooms for the first time. Yeah. But my friend cried for 6 hours and I watched that happen. And let me tell you, it is one of the things that got me really interested in studying psychedelics. That and traumatic brain injuries, which... I know you wanted to say a few words on.
Well, I think that's so interesting because there is a substance that's called ibogaine. It's relatively new in the lexicon, but it's been around for hundreds of years because it comes from a plant in 2 countries in West Africa, Gabon and Cameroon. This is a very obscure the plant is not obscure, but it's a strange little thing. The French actually used iboga root in a stimulating tonic that was sold up until 1967. called Lamborghini. So it had some benefit. They knew about it, all right? But it is it is like the Everest of psychedelics, right? It's the longest trip. It can mess with the heart, so you have to be monitored quite carefully so that it doesn't increase a certain interval of heart beating. It doesn't happen to many people, but it can happen to a few people. However, what they have learned is that it is the only substance on earth that can stop addiction after one dose. And we're talking about addiction to opioids, cigarettes,
sugar,
alcohol, cell phones.
Yeah, any addictive patterns or behaviors.
It can break any of these. It's not guaranteed that it will, but it can. And there are clinics, a couple in Mexico, that are chronicling this. It also has the amazing ability to help people with traumatic brain injury and PTSD. These are, again, illnesses that no medicine can treat. And you saw this, right?
Yeah.
When you were in ICU?
Yeah. I worked for a few years in the ICU in acute traumatic brain injury, so the worst of the worst. And what I did learn is that people were just cycling on their mental health medications for the rest of their lives with no solutions.
No solution.
And so this is the first time that we might have a solution. So it's groundbreaking. They sent 30 vets with mild traumatic brain injury to Ambio in Mexico. And this was a Stanford study. And for the first time in their lives, they had hope. They had hope for the first time because there had been no solution that reconnected them with themselves. When you have a traumatic brain injury, after your brain heals, you're left with sensitivity to light, sound, depression, anxiety, things that just make living everyday life very, very difficult. So your quality of life goes down. Of course, you get, plunged into a deep depression, and then you can also have the trauma from the incident that caused the traumatic brain injury in the first place that you need to process. And so here's a medicine that is not only helping you process that, because people report seeing their entire lives kind of ticker tape
in the experience.
In the experience, and it's like they see the whole thing, and there's a little bit of distance from it where it doesn't feel so arduous and it doesn't feel like a burden. They could really look at it, appreciate it, live it. And then there's this insane healing that happens of the brain networks again.
Well, somebody described it. He said to me when I was doing it, I would see something that happened in my life and I could accept it or reject it, like swipe left, swipe right.
Right.
Which is pretty amazing.
Like the Tinder of
pretty
life.
Amazing, I think. The grinder approach to
the Tinder.
Traumatic brain injury.
No, but that's
But
phenomenal.
there's a documentary on Netflix. I think it's
Waves
called
and Wars.
On Waves and Wars.
Yeah, it's on Netflix. You should absolutely watch that. Absolutely.
Pretty good, I have to say. And it's about these vets, these combat vets who really have, it's ruining their their wives, their lives, the whole thing is falling apart. And they talk about crying for 6 hours. These guys are really moved by this experience. It was very good, I thought, very good.
It's like neurochemical jazz. It's like your opioid receptors, your serotonin transporters, dopamine, norepinephrine, and probably some
Kappa
others.
opioids,
yes,
yeah, all these other ones.
It's just all around. Big reset button in a huge way.
And no other psychedelic hits that level of brain receptors. It's quite fascinating.
Yeah, and I've even read, this is even more fascinating, so when you are addicted to a substance or you have an addictive personality, that writes itself and codes itself in your genes. This is something that you can physically pass on a cellular level to your children.
Wow.
It will unwrite that, so to speak, from your DNA, decode it from your DNA. Yeah, it's pretty fascinating.
Very powerful. Very powerful.
That's one that you haven't done?
I have not done Ibogaine.
Yeah.
I got to wait for that calling to happen.
Yeah.
I got to wait for that one to be called for that one. It just feels big, and I haven't done that. I haven't done San Pedro, and I've never tried. And I've never tried DMT. I've used UFO, the frog, 5-MeO DMT, but it's a very different experience from DMT.
Right. All right. So that's the
Let's
do our lightning round. All right, lightning round. Let's start with ayahuasca, DMT. What is the word that comes to mind when you think of ayahuasca?
Big, rip, tear, hold, mother.
Okay, that's good.
What's yours?
Euphoria.
Oh.
My first journey was euphoric. I was blessed. I got a little taste. Then I got rocked a little bit, so I think of the bathroom, because that's where I got rocked, in the bathroom. I see a vine. I see a vine when I think of ayahuasca.
Think about that. Okay.
Okay. Oh, yes.
Okay, come on.
Yes.
Okay, so
okay. All right.
all right, this is psychedelic, right? So ayahuasca
Talk about plant intelligence.
is two plants from the, there's 80,000 species of plants in the Amazon rainforest, okay? And that's a big area. It goes, from northern Chile all the way to southern Colombia and all the way through Brazil. And it's two of these plants put together, boiled for like 3 days into a tea and then drank, right?
Yeah, you've got
Who told these indigenous people it's chacruna and Banisteriopsis? Put these together, boil them up, drink it.
Right.
Now, so the native people say the plants told us. And
yes, they did.
I don't see any other explanation.
There's no other explanation. So that's
pretty psychedelic.
That's really beautiful and super psychedelic. Okay. Psilocybin.
Fungal, eating, tearing down. You can see that I have a different kind of a system than probably most people in the world. It can also be very joyous and a lot of giggles.
Yeah, I have giggles. Sensitive, emo, internal. I'm very internal, kind of antisocial.
Okay.
Yeah, MDMA.
Love, touch, feeling, crying, saying, hearing, absorbing.
Cool. Truth, compassion, dancing, love, joy.
Dancing.
2CB.
I like diet LSD. It's
yeah, that's
perfect.
A good one.
It's like, it's big, it hits hard and fast, and it's gorgeous, and you can dance, you can cuddle. It's over in 5 hours.
It's a long experience.
There's no after effects. You're up the next day and feeling good.
Quite nice.
I think 2CB. Alexander Shulgin said if there were ever to be an aphrodisiac synthesized, it would have the basis of 2CB.
I don't get it. It's just so weird in a good way, but it's so weird.
Do you get the erotic thing? Yeah?
Yeah, I understand there's like the concept behind it, at least, because the empathogenic quality.
Yeah.
Lower doses, yeah.
Lower doses.
Lower doses.
LSD.
I like it bitchy, cold, real, gorgeous, music, big, heart.
Sparkly.
Yeah, I feel it big.
Yeah.
Yeah, expansive.
Yeah. Liquefy. That's what I think about.
Liquefy. Liquid, yeah, I like it.
Are you all familiar with Leonard Picard? The clandestine chemist and one of the largest LSD dealers in the whole world, who went to prison for 40 years in a maximum security prison and was released just a few years ago? How old is he? 90?
Leonard? No. He's
not in his 90s? He's in 70.
Yeah, he is.
Really?
He's in his 70s.
Oh,
I interviewed him for the book.
Well, good then. I thought he was older than that.
He's a brilliant guy. I mean, he's a really amazing guy. He is not bitter. He is not angry.
No, he's not.
And he wrote this crazy novel in prison with a pencil, on paper, with a pencil. I mean, it's this big. It's a huge novel, The Rose of Paracelsus. And in it, he he describes the capture. His business partner turned him in, basically called the FBI and said, Leonard Pickard is in Kansas in an abandoned missile silo, which is where they were manufacturing.
He ran for like a week, by the way.
He got the idea that they were coming after him. He got in his car, drove, left the car, and then ran for it's absolutely true, through the frozen fields of Kansas, and he hid in a barn for I think another week until they eventually caught him. It's a very harrowing. It's worth buying the book just for that harrowing description of what happened to him. But he's a lovely, brilliant guy. He now works for a baby biopharma company, a venture capital fund based in New York. JLS fund, yeah. Sort of looking at the way they're making new molecules. And
he's very optimistic about the landscape. He's just like all of it, medicalized, recreational, psychoplastogens, all of it. It's all good. Yeah, he's just happy to be here.
I think he's just happy to be here.
He's very happy to be here. I met him at a conference. It was the first time that he could travel outside of the state of California. And he was very eager to give me his phone number.
What a surprise.
He's a great man. Okay, what DMT?
I don't know DMT, but it's amazing because apparently the entities come, and it happens to people all around the world. They all see the same sort of entities.
Now, is that a product of the fact that we have brains, or is that because we're accessing another world?
Some scientists think it's coming from another world.
So they're doing these extended DMT trials where they're doing IV DMT, hooking up two people just like this to see if they'll meet in their journeys.
See if they'll meet. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a very
And DMT is a very quick trip, and so now they're doing extended to see how long they can stay in there.
It's very
Does it sound familiar? Red pill, blue pill.
Very interesting. Now, 5-MeO, though, is very different. So 5-MeO DMT, similar name, but it comes from, okay, here's another psychedelic one, okay? You go to the Sonoran Desert, which is just between Texas, Arizona, and northern Mexico, and there's a particular frog called Bufo alvarius, a very big green frog that you capture. You squeeze the parotid gland, which are these two big glands on its back. It excretes a venom, they call it, a liquid venom. You dry it, and then you put it in a pipe and you smoke it.
Who told you to do that?
Who figured that out?
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
It's like so baffling, right?
Let's save the frogs now, and let's please do synthetic.
Well, now you can find it.
Yeah.
It's already made synthetically, but that's it's like a whiteout experience. Have you ever used it?
No, they call it the God molecule.
It is so powerful. It is beautiful, but it's all white, and you're gone. You're totally gone into this beautiful place. That's all I can use is beauty. And then as it comes back, it's absolute, the world rebuilding, reconstituting itself it is divine. If that's a near-death, they call it a near-death experience.
Yes, they do.
And if that's it, it's okay.
Well, okay, and there's a caveat to that. So it's not for everyone, because I am aware of certain people who have done it therapeutically, who were maybe suffering from depression and suicidality, and once they met God and experienced that much love and acceptance and safety, they didn't want to return.
Oh, okay.
No, but that's a real thing.
That's a real thing.
It's something we have to caution.
Well, people who are really, I mean, if you have a certain sort of mental illness or schizophrenia or bipolar, I mean, you've got to be very careful using these substances.
Our clinic in Santa Monica is going to be participating in a 5-MeO trial, and the screening process is very thorough.
It should be.
Yeah, well, of course. Of course. Okay. I think we're wrapping up here.
Ketamine?
Ketamine.
Fluid. I mean, I think ketamine's amazing. It's such a powerful psychedelic. Very little understood, I think, or misunderstood.
Not a classic psychedelic.
Not a classic.
It's an anesthetic.
It was discovered as an anesthesia in 1962. But it's so safe, they gave it to every soldier in the U.S. gave it to their army. Every soldier had 2 syringes of it. So if your buddy got hit or walked on a landmine and the pain was excruciating, you could give him a shot, and for like an hour, 30 minutes to an hour, no pain.
Right.
Get enough to get into the medevac and get to a hospital. That's how extraordinarily safe it is.
Yeah, and mind you, in the clinical setting, we're not using anesthesia doses. They're sub-anesthetic doses, or else you wouldn't even remember what you went through. But it is really powerful. I think we get really caught up in the legalization of all of these medicines, and here's a really great tool. Again, not for everyone. Addictive potential, absolutely, especially if you do it nasally, because you've got some opioid receptors right here. But I've seen it save people's lives. And I think it's really interesting too, because you mentioned in combat, so in the ER, we use it.
It's like a combat zone, isn't it?
Right. And there's an opportunity here to use ketamine in mental health instead of benzodiazepines. People walk into the ER all the time having a panic attack, an anxiety attack, suicidal ideation. And we traditionally just give them benzos. Why not give them ketamine and open up a pathway to mental health? And so I think that's going to be an application in the future.
There's also a lot of at-home ketamine services now that you can take, I'm sure.
I don't know how I feel about it. I'm not into it too much.
But I had one friend who said to me, it was life-changing because he's been a depressive his whole life.
For sure.
And he takes these troches that taste terrible. It's a lozenge. And I guess he takes one a day, and he checks in with a therapist on the regular through Zoom, and it just has changed his life. You think it's controversial, though?
I think that the troches have their place, especially for like pain management, for like the lighter mood disorders. But Mind Bloom is sending subcutaneous needles to people's homes, and it's, of course, people are going to say it changed their lives because the medicine is very helpful, but it's not something that's meant to be done in isolation. So I don't like the home model.
You don't?
No.
It's very medical of you.
I know. And at the same time, I'm all about recreation and exploring, and yet I don't. Well, because it's a different context, right? We're sending it to people who are experiencing challenges, significant challenges. So I think that they deserve to be held. And at home, we can't control if they are being held in the right way.
I think one thing we haven't mentioned is that all the clinical research is a therapeutic model.
Right.
It's not you just take the substance and go home. It's you take the substance and you're in a therapeutic situation. Right. You are in care. And I think that's really important to say. It's not, because these things are not going to change any, as we know, like look at the 1960s, it didn't change anybody's lives for the good necessarily, although maybe it did as well. But it's not a universal panacea as just a medicine itself. It is a context dependent.
Right, the container is important.
It really is a container.
But something that's really cool to know is that, so far all of the studies on microdosing are not that great. They're not being shown to be superior to placebo. They're not being studied in the right way. All of the study models have been really crappy, and they don't replicate real life, how we actually use microdosing, which is a ritual or even a regimen, because we follow protocols, and it really integrates into our everyday life. It really fits.
Yeah.
So if you're having to like report to a clinic or a clinical setting for your microdose, how is that reflective of real life? So Johns Hopkins is actually doing a study right now to demonstrate that microdosing is safe at home, so that they can start studying with an at-home model, just like Canada does, just like New Zealand does, and there's, I think in Germany maybe, or Switzerland, they have home models.
That's why their studies are different than our studies often.
Right. And New Zealand is doing incredible women's health studies with microdosing, both psilocybin and LSD.
Before we wrap, actually, will you tell me how women's cycles are
gifts?
They are gifts, okay. But how they change the potency of a psychedelic or the response to a psychedelic.
Yeah. So we cycle with if we cycle naturally, we cycle with the moon, right? A lot of us are synced up because we're divine creatures. And even if we are on contraceptives and we aren't cycling naturally, we have cycles, right? Our estrogen rises and falls twice in our cycle. And there's a relationship that's been established between estrogen and serotonin. When estrogen is high, we make more serotonin, we break it down slower, and the receptors become more dense to bind to serotonin, and they become more sensitive. So what does that mean? Is that when we are peaking in estrogen in our cycles, we might feel classic psychedelics, serotonergic psychedelics, more intensely and more deeply. So sometimes I've heard my friends say, I did the same dose last month and it was so much stronger, and now it's like super light this time. Where were you at in your cycle? Now, the opportunity here is super interesting, because one important thing to know is that the intensity of one's journey has been linked to more positive outcomes, more sense of unity, right? Transcendence, more meaning making leads to better results in like the medical model, more positive results. The other thing that's important to know is the dosing, right? So that's the second thing. And then the other thing is that when we have premenstrual disorders, postpartum depression, and even mood imbalances, sleep disturbances in midlife as we move towards menopause and our estrogen starts to dip, there's an opportunity to create psychedelic-assisted therapies for those important life transitions. I think we're going to be seeing ketamine-assisted therapy as well as psilocybin-assisted therapy for postpartum depression, something that is completely mismanaged at this moment in time. In the perimenopausal transition, all we have is symptom management. And that transition is super existential. It's linked to our identity.
And it's long. It can go on for a long time.
Yes,
right?
We can start the perimenopausal transition in our late 30s, and we don't hit menopause until our 50s. And so we're just left cycling. Women have become, suddenly like unattracted to their partners, can't stand hearing them breathe. Some of them experience suicidal ideation, mood, hot flashes, all of that. It's all intrinsically related to our serotonergic system. It is the most dynamic system, neurochemical system in women, and women are so much more hormonally dynamic than men, though all of this has led to what? We have no great solutions. It's just
Get to
Band-Aid.
work, woman.
Yes. So
Get to work.
yeah. So there's an opportunity here, and I'm something that I'm very excited about, something that I work with on a daily basis, and I think I don't know, the future is bright. The future is bright for women.
Okay, so thanks for
thank you so much
coming.
for your
thanks
attention.
for listening. We'll sign some
Thank you.
books. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was great.